Joined now by Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers, who is a busy, busy man right now. Don, how's the voice holding up?
So far, so good. Just had a couple of games this week, and football game on Saturday, a basketball game on Sunday, and we got the same scenario coming up this coming weekend with a Friday game in basketball and a Saturday game in football. So we're getting a workout.
Yeah, I just wrote it down. Starting from this past Saturday, we had a game Saturday, Sunday. You've got your do this with us today. Then tonight, you've got the first coaches show with Mike Woodson at Chop Shop. Then Wednesday, the coaches show with Tom Allen at Chop Shop. Then Friday, an exhibition game, and then Saturday, another football game.
Just a little bit of preparation. So it's a fun time. November is always the busiest month of the year, or late October and early November, the whole month of November for that matter, because you've got football and basketball colliding at this time of the year. And it's a lot of work. There's no question about it, but it's still fun. You're doing play-by-play. You're doing sports. What better life can you have?
Exactly. And a great game on Saturday. The Hoosiers shocked a lot of people, not completely with a win, but the sheer fact that they were a 30-point underdog and throughout the entire game, putting pressure on the number 9 ranked Penn State Nittany Lions, who actually rose in the AP poll after that unbelievable win for them. I don't know how that happens, but it did.
Well, I haven't looked at the rankings this morning because I just don't like to look at them. I know we're not going to be in them, but here's the point. Indiana played themselves a football game that I think most people thought was not in them any longer, which I'm so happy to see it. I give Tom Allen and the coaching staff a lot of credit for getting these kids ready to play. I give these players a tremendous amount of credit for hanging in there and deciding that, look, we're just not going to go away without whimpering at this point in the season. We've still got a chance to accomplish some goals here. And even they didn't do it against Penn State. They gave themselves an opportunity against the 10th ranked team in the country at that point. One of the best teams without question in the country, and certainly the best in the Big Ten. So to play that kind of a ball game, to hang in there, to play as tough as they did, for the defense to do what they did in this ball game, very impressive, because that's the kind of defense we kind of saw in the early part of the season. At different times against Louisville in the second half, certainly against Ohio State in the first game of the year. We just thought this defense was going to be able to do this all season long, but they were making way too many mistakes in some of those other matchups. In this game, they made very few mistakes. In fact, they played their guts out because the first half, they were on the field for 40-plus snaps of the first half of the football game. They were worn out at halftime, but they came back in the second half and hung in there as well. So to me, the most important part of what we saw in this football game was what Indiana did at the defensive side of the football to keep in this contest. It was the offense that kind of didn't get it done at the end of the ball game.
Yeah, and not only that, they were down in the secondary. You've got some guys that were out, so it wasn't like they were at full strength. But offensively, Brendan Sorsby at first looked a little discombobulated, the offense, but once he seemed to get settled in, boy, that 90-yarder sure woke some people up in Happy Valley. It was certainly an unhappy valley at that moment.
Oh, there was a lot of booing in this ball game. The fans were very upset with their offensive performance in this contest, no question about that. And the fact that Indiana got the lead on Penn State 2 different times in this ball game in the first half had the fan base pretty quiet and upset, to say the least. So it was a fun day. It really was, because the expectations were that Indiana was going to get blown away. And that just didn't happen. So you look at it from the perspective of how well the defense played to hang in there, to do the job that they did. For the way Brendan Sorsby played in this game, for the most part, it was a much improved performance, in my opinion. Those 2 bombs, 69 and 90-yard pass plays to DeKeith Carter and Donovan McCulley, were just huge plays for this football team. And I think this performance, even though it's disappointing to have lost it, gives this team a confidence level that they previously have not had, and a belief that they still have the ability to turn this thing around if they keep their act together. And if they play like they did against Penn State, against every one of these teams that they still have to play, they're going to give themselves a chance to win all of them.
And that is actually truth. And that's not an opinion I held prior to this game. I promise you that.
Right.
But it really makes you wonder, what would this team look like if Brendan Sorsby had started all year? Or you've got a guy that it doesn't even have to be Brendan, but someone who had started all year, gotten all those snaps. But of course, you still had the OC issue. So I guess that point is kind of moot. But it would have been nice to see.
Well, I agree with that, and I think at this point we have to say kudos to Rod Carey. I mean, I think he has done a really good job of changing the offensive game plans to getting this team in a position. I think the players are in better positions out on the field to make plays at this juncture because of what they're trying to do. I think they're taking advantage of what they have talent-wise at this juncture. Now, granted, Jalen Lucas didn't do much of anything in this game. It was one of the few times that he hasn't been targeted as much and those kinds of things. But even as a decoy, he becomes a major factor. So I think that's a plus. They're still not using the tight end as much as I would think that they would like to. But at this point, you've just got to give the offensive side of the football credit for making some positive things happen in that area. And then on the defensive side, again, I'm giving the defense as much credit as I am for this performance on Saturday against Penn State, because Indiana actually had more yards in this game than Penn State did. And so you just got to say, look, yes, it's disappointing to lose. Are there moral victories? In my mind, you're daggone right there are. There are moral victories, because this one had to be one of those in the sense of getting this team back and believing in themselves again.
Well, and the running game was much improved. Josh Henderson back healthy. Probably the best. It's the best performance he's had all season. Several runs that were important and crucial at the time. This kind of reminds me of the Michigan State game last year, where that was at that time the season was absolutely lost, but that team went up there and did that. I'm like, they did what? So this could be that turnaround for this program.
And again, I have to congratulate the coaching staff. I mean, Tom Allen keeps talking about resiliency and bouncing back and those kinds of things. And for 2 or 3 weeks there, we didn't see that. But now all of a sudden, we see it. And so he hangs in there. You got to give the guy credit. He just never stops believing in his football team. And apparently they bought in.
The one thing I do have to question is not going for the win or not going for the lead when they had Penn State on their heels. And that when you're on the road, in my opinion, my meager experience coaching high school football, you got to go for the throat. And Indiana just didn't do that. They acknowledged that they settled for a field goal. And man, you can't settle on the road if you have an opportunity to do something. And I think that Indiana more than had an opportunity to keep pushing Penn State at that moment.
Can't argue. They got very conservative in that series after they got the interception from Josh Sanguinetti and had an opportunity at the 21-yard line. At least one throw out of those 3 runs that they had, you would have thought that they would have tried to do something in that vein. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. We can second guess all day. I guess Twitter went nuts and was negative towards Tom and Rod Carey both for the play calls that took place at that time. And I understand that from that perspective, but I also understand why coaches think the way they think. You don't want to make a mistake down there and cost yourself an opportunity. They had an opportunity, I think, to score a touchdown, but they decided to make sure they're going to play it safe and at least tie the score, maybe send it into an overtime situation. But there was still too much time left. And you got to remember, your defense is worn out. I mean, that's the whole point. So long story short, it didn't happen. We move on. And now you hope that they have a chance against the Wisconsin Badgers on Saturday.
Yep. Swapping gears, basketball. Indiana unofficially got its season off yesterday with an exhibition win over UIndy that started choppy. The first half looked like looked like you and me were out there playing. Indiana looked like they forgot to come out. They scored 25 points. They were down 27-25 at the half, but there was a conversation held at the halftime locker room, I'm going to assume, because Indiana comes out and doubles that output. They score 75 total points, 50 in the second half. And obviously they just imposed their will on Indy in that second half. They really would allow too many 3-point shots. 6 of 19 in the first half, but in the second half, at one point, they held the Greyhounds to 1 of 10. They ended up 2 of 16 in the second half. So it was a tale of two halves. And I talked earlier, St. John's lost to Division II Pace. So this stuff can happen in the early going, but the second half was probably more the team that you're going to see from Indiana.
I don't think there's any question about that. I do think that there was nerves involved. I think these the new faces out there, all the new people that they have in this roster, that played into it, playing in front of an Indiana crowd for the first time. I just think that they were discombobulated going out there, and they looked like they were playing pickup basketball the first half. It was just kind of, there wasn't real structure to what they were trying to do. And then they started the second half, and what'd they do? They went inside to get easy baskets. That's how they started the second half, and it just paid off from that point forward because they were finally able to run an offense. Looked like they had some discipline to what they were trying to do out there. I will say this. I thought the defense throughout the ball game was pretty doggone good. Not necessarily at the beginning of the very first half of the ball game, but once they settled down, and Mike Woodson even gave credit to the second unit who he put in there. He said those guys played so hard at the defensive end, they changed the whole tone of the ball game. And it's true. There's no question about that. And if you don't like Gabe Cupps, I don't know who you're going to like on a basketball court, because that kid is something else. And we're giving him a lot of praise after an exhibition game, but he is going to play that kind of defense all season long because that's just who he is. And he is going to be a pain in people's butts in regard to causing them to have problems out there just because he plays so hard at the defensive end. And he can do other things at the offensive end as well. He's just a smart basketball player. And as Woodson said at our pregame show, fans are going to love Gabe Cupps.
He forced a 10-second call on his own to give you an idea of what we're talking about. By just defending a player in the back court and just putting it on him. He reminds me, we were having a conversation that it's probably been 2 years ago now, but you were talking about it's been longer than that. Maybe I think it was back to the former regime. It was that there were no gym rats on that particular team. He reminds me exactly of that, a gym rat.
Oh, he's that. There's no question about it. He's in Cook Hall practicing when nobody else is there. He's the first guy in, the last guy out. He's one of those kinds of players. He loves the game. He's a coach's kid. He's got a phenomenal basketball IQ. You can see it. And you don't have Mike Woodson talking about a freshman like he did in our pregame show on Saturday, or on Sunday, I should say, yesterday. You don't see Mike Woodson talk about a kid like that unless he's pretty sure he's got something special there. And there's no doubt in my mind, because he said himself, he said, I think our fan base is going to love Gabe Cupps. And I don't think there's any doubt they're already in love with him.